Welcome to the Salt Lake City Historic Landmarks Commission meeting for August 1st, 2019. We had a field trip to the 613 East First South. Two commissioners attended that. Others have visited on their own. And we had a nice meal, and no commission business was conducted in that meeting. I don't have anything to report as the chair, other than we would like to welcome a new member, Rocio Torres Mora. Welcome to the commission. We look forward to your participation.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good. Michaela, Paul, do you have anything for us?
Yes, I do.
Oh.
Marlene or myself, or both of us, have sent out an email to you all about iPad returns, and please respond back so we can kind of do a switch over and give new tablets and get our city-owned iPads back. That was just something that I'd like to mention.
Must have gone to people that have.
If you have them. If you don't have one, you're off the hook, and we have a new tablet for you. That's all I have to say.
All right. I guess I've already gotten a little bit out of order. I need to ask for approval of the minutes from the June 6th, 2019 meeting. So hopefully everyone has read through those minutes. Can I have a motion regarding those minutes, please?
I move that those minutes be approved as presented.
Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. We can just take a general voice vote on this. All in favor of approving the June minutes, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. Those minutes are approved. Thank you very much. First, we have one card for public comments from Cindy Cromer. Please approach, and you know the routine.
Kenton.
Paul?
Would it be possible for me to ask one question of staff before we move into the agenda items? It's real short.
I reckon you can.
Oh, thank you. I've been out of town for over a month, but I was home doing my normal jog, and the Covey Apartments, which are on the corner of First Avenue and A, are gone. They're completely gone, and I was very surprised that hadn't come before the commission. And I was wondering, you might know offhand, or if you have a chance.
You know right offhand.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
I'm just curious how that happened.
You're right. We would never and cannot administratively approve any demolitions of contributing buildings. That building essentially collapsed. Part of it. I believe that the French drains clogged with water, and a ton of water pooled up on top, and luckily no one was injured.
My understanding is very different. It's that the roof drain was not cleared on the back of the building, the back of the parking structure. And as a result, during heavy spring rains and runoff, that part of the roof got overloaded, and only one corner of the building collapsed. Somehow, we're issued a demolition permit for demolition of the entire building, when in fact only part of the building was at risk. And I was really kind of shocked to see how they've moved forward with it. It's really been shocking.
That's, wow.
An emergency demolition permit.
So the emergency demolition permit must have been for the parcel number, which allowed them to take the whole building down.
That's right.
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
Hey, thank you.
Right, good. Yeah, good question, Paul. And thanks, David. Cindy, please come back.
So my comments, I'm Cindy Cromer still, and I'm perennial, chronic, won't go away. My comment tonight is a first installment on what is going to be an extended piece of research. How did we come to the conclusion that new construction in historic communities needs to be a product of its own time? How did the concept attain the level of a standard with the Department of Interior? I've thought about this issue a great deal in the last 12 years since I removed additions from the home of Frederick Albert Hale on 600 East. I mourned the disappearance of the earlier versions of the structure, concluded that Frederick Hale did his better work on other people's properties, and removed the additions that were products of their own time. Only after I did that and also removed the paint on the masonry could anyone see merit in the structure. Clearly the modifications were products of their own time, but they were getting in the way of any appreciation of the structure in the present time. I did not feel the slightest bit guilty about demolishing the work of Frederick Hale. He had used his home as a guinea pig, and some of the experiments failed miserably. It wasn't, however, until the proposal from Public Utilities to place a product of its own time in City Creek Park that I asked, what's the source of this standard? Why does it carry the weight of a commandment? Apparently, the basis for the standard goes back at least to the 19th century in the Society for the Preservation of Ancient Buildings. As it turns out, the Cathedral of Notre Dame was a victim of excessively zealous renovation. Fast forward to the Venice Charter of 1964, when I was 14, when the prominent architects opined that new buildings should bear a contemporary stamp. Typically in this country, the pendulum swings widely. We appear to have gone from assembling historic parts in the development of Trolley Square and calling that preservation to abandoning the materials and character of proximate structures in creating new ones. I suspect that we are stuck at one end of the swinging pendulum because that is our pattern as a culture. It is the American way, getting stuck. While I'm digging, my focus will be on the timeless landscape at 4th Avenue and Canyon Road with its use of materials that the city has been investing in for 107 years. It will take some compelling findings from my research to justify a radical change in materials used consistently there or the use of a design associated with a tightly restricted period of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's going to be interesting. Agreed. All right, we'll move into the public hearing. Our item tonight is modifications to row house development at 613 East, 100 South. Staff will begin the show. Thank you.
All right. Good evening. My name is Ashley Scarf. I did want to give a full disclaimer. I was not the planner who worked on this project the first round or this round, actually. I just am presenting all of her work. So I will do the best I can to answer all of your questions. So this evening, the request is for modifications to a certificate of appropriateness for new construction, which was approved by the HLC in December of 2017. The constructed project differs from what was approved by the HLC and staff. The commission shall either approve, deny, or you can request further changes be made to the as-built drawings. Staff is recommending that the commission denies all of the proposed changes with 3 exceptions: a change in garage door material, front and rear doorway details on the ground floor for all 3 units, including windows next to the doors, and all modifications made to the rear facade of the development. And I'll go into these specifically in my next slides. So just for a very brief background on this, in December 2017, HLC approved the new construction project. There was one condition. The commission requested that the applicant design a street-facing entrance that addressed the street in a more meaningful way. And then in January 2018, Planning Commission approved a plan development petition associated with this project. So there was, they created lots without street frontage, 2 setbacks were reduced, and there was also a reduction in a landscape buffer as part of that approval. In February 2018, staff issued the COA after working out the front entrance details. The building permit was issued in October of 2018, and then it was this past June that the planner who actually worked on the project noticed the structure wasn't being built as it was approved and contacted the applicant directly. And she then realized that ownership of the property and the developer working on the project had changed since the original approval was issued. So to try to simplify the presentation, I am just going to discuss each elevation individually one at a time. So this slide shows the approved front facade to the left and the as-built front facade to the right. You can see the 2 rows of windows on the left have changed in configuration and dimension from one large opening with a tripartite arrangement to 4 smaller fixed casement windows. All of the windows have changed from the approved fiberglass to a vinyl material. And the sliding glass doors that are meant to access the second level balcony have changed to fiberglass French doors with a transom above. And this was originally approved as a glass slider. And then the front doorway on the ground level, which was a point of discussion at the first meeting, was ultimately approved as a cherry wood door with full height side lights. And I don't have an image of that it's in the staff report. But the as-built show what was constructed, but the applicants have suggested using a mahogany wood door, which is shown at the bottom right of this slide. And that would be centered on that building wall and would replace both the door and the side window that's shown on the as-builts. Both the front door and balcony doors are slightly shorter than the doors that were approved. The applicants have indicated that there's been HVAC equipment moved to above those door areas, so they wouldn't be able to increase the height of the doors without reconfiguring that system. So they are 6 feet 8 inches instead of 9 feet, and 9 feet is the full height of the floor. So the doors were approved to be as tall as the floor. Staff finds that the proposed front door has a similar emphasis as the one approved for the COA and recommends the proposed change to the front door, but staff is recommending to deny all other modifications on this facade. So this might help seeing what's been constructed. This is the front facade, the level of completion so far. And then here's just a further out photo. And I did throw in, it's kind of hard to see the streetscape drawing this is from the first set of plans that were approved. But you can kind of see the scale of the structure in comparison to the rest of the block face. Okay. So I'll move on to the east elevation. Well, again, the top is what was approved, and the bottom shows the as-built. So again, all windows were changed in number, configuration, dimension, and they are all vinyl instead of fiberglass. On the second level, the balconies are accessed by the same south-facing fiberglass French door with transom that we just saw on that front facade. So you actually can't see those doors, but they are facing, for units 2 and 3 towards the back, there is that same French door with transom. The 3 third-level balconies are accessed by a vinyl door, which was approved as a glass slider originally. And last, the applicant has proposed to use the mahogany wood door shown in the corner of the slide for the front doors of units 2 and 3. So the doors shown on the ground level towards the back do function as the front doors to those units. They're also proposing to change the approved glass panel garage doors to steel panel. Staff's recommendation is to deny the modifications to all windows and doors with the exception of the garage door material and the front entry doorways for units 2 and 3. So staff is recommending that the 2 doors, if they were mahogany wood, we would recommend to keep those and to also keep the window to the right of the door. And that's mainly because those inset areas are recessed 3 feet and they're not highly visible from the right-of-way. You can see this elevation as built. So again, here the top is the approved version, the bottom is the as-built. It's a similar situation with all the windows on this facade. There's a totally different fenestration pattern on the as-built. The 3 doors shown on the ground level function as the rear doors for each unit. They've been installed as fiberglass rather than the cherry wood that was approved. Staff's recommendation on this facade is to deny the modifications to all the windows and doors, with the exception of the 3 fiberglass doors, including the windows to the left of the doors. And again, those insets aren't as recessed as on the other side, but it is recessed. There's also only a 5-foot setback on this side. And the area with the doors just isn't highly visible from the street. And here's the best picture we could get of this facade. It's kind of hard to see. And then last, this is the north elevation, which is the rear of the structure. It's the facade that's been impacted the least, with 3 windows that are generally in the approved location, but are different dimensions and materials. These are also vinyl. Due to the low visibility of this elevation, staff's recommending to approve all modifications that have been made to this side.
Actually, those are vinyl.
Yes. And this project was reviewed and approved under our old new construction standards as December 2017, which the planner analyzed again in the staff report for this meeting in relation to the changes that have been made. She found that the structure no longer meets all of the standards, specifically 1D scale of a structure, 2A proportion of openings, 2B rhythm of solids to voids and facades, and 2D relationship of materials. And this slide just outlines the motions available to the commission. Staff is recommending that the project be denied with the 3 specific exceptions. It could be fully denied, and the applicants would have to revert the entire design back to what was originally approved. If it were approved, the applicants can proceed with construction of the project as shown on the as-built drawings. The commission may also choose to table the proposal and have the applicants return with an amended design. That's everything.
Would you, excuse me, Ashley, would you please repeat the items that staff feels could be approved?
Sure, yeah. Sorry, I have that on the first slide. So that's the change in the garage door material on the east side. 3 garage doors were approved with glass paneling, and they're proposed to have steel paneling. The front and rear doorway details on the ground floor of each unit. So basically the front and rear door for all 3 units, and that includes the front entrance that faces the street. And then all modifications made to the rear facade.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, do you have questions for staff?
So,
Robert, go ahead.
go ahead.
Do you, I don't know if you know this, but do you know how the profile and the reveals of the windows that are installed compare to what we approved?
I'm not sure compared to what was approved. I know that the profile of the windows now do protrude from the facade a little bit. I don't have anything in here. I think the staff report might have close-up pictures of the windows. Sorry about that.
And that's something we can ask the applicant to talk about. Robert?
So I'm just curious how this is coming before us now. I mean, obviously, what was approved wasn't built. Is this something where the city did an inspection and found this and stopped construction?
So the planner who worked on this just noticed it on her own driving by the project and reached out to the applicant directly. So there is no official stop work order on this or anything, but the applicant stopped working on the exterior because obviously it's subject to change right now.
That's all I've got.
Okay, other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Would the applicant please come forward and make your presentation? Please speak clearly into the microphone and give your full name, please.
You can just use theirs.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for being here and for letting us be here tonight to talk to you about our project. Basically, I just want to take a few minutes to kind of share with you.
Would you give us your name,
Oh,
please,
I'm
and
so sorry.
affiliation?
You betcha. I'm Tate Seymour is my name. I'm one of the two owners of the project.
Thank you.
You betcha. Okay, so I just want to, we'll share with you kind of, obviously there's some, I'm sure you have some huge questions about how we got to this point, and we'll share with you from our perspective how we're there. We'll also share with you why we think the building that we're proposing with the tweaks that we're proposing is not only beautiful, but also is reflective of some of the surrounding architecture and the historic district standards. I got to tell you, for me, well, first of all, to say that I'm not nervous wouldn't be truthful, and part of that is because I feel like I'm tasked with talking about the nuances of music with Mozart or whoever. Truly, I'd never heard the term fenestration before 3 weeks ago, and so to put this together for you guys was pretty daunting. We've done the best that we can, and I'll just get into it. So let's see, does that work? Yeah. So we had some renderings done of the building that we're proposing. This is basically it with the changes that Ashley mentioned, the ones that both they're recommending that you approve and the other ones as well. A couple of other renderings here. Can't see this real well, but I wanted to give you guys, oh, Carl, would you grab those two, the notebooks? And maybe just, if anybody needs it. So we wanted to show you what the plans originally called for, so we had those renderings done. And then that says as built. It's actually proposed. That's not exactly as built. Same with, so that was the east facade. This is the west facade. The difference is there. And I think one of the things to notice is that, at least at first glance from the curb, they're both, I think, beautiful versions of this building, and there's not a huge amount of variation until you start looking, and then there is quite a bit, as you know. Once again, just some more photos of the proposal on the top and the plans on the bottom. Notice the east facade is pretty difficult to see, or at least isn't real evident from the street. But so here we are again. So I'll do that. Save the thank yous for the end here. I've never done a slideshow before either, guys. So this is my first one at this. So how we got here? A very simple way of explaining it is that Carl and I have never done a new build project before, and we certainly have never done a new build project in a historic district before. Our background is in single-family renovation, and we were brought this project by a developer who brought it to us with plans, with permits, with a recommended builder, and with a budget from the builder that seemingly worked inside of the underwriting. We relied heavily on what we felt like was the mentorship of this particular developer and the advice of the developer, and hired the builder that was recommended, being green at both the due diligence and the underwriting. Like I said, we were relying on a couple of other people to lead us in the right direction, and
we just had have had since the very beginning, including digging for the foundation, where were digging for footers, and they found an old foundation about 20 feet down. So from the very beginning, we were over budget and behind schedule, which is not your concern, but is worth mentioning. And given our lack of experience in underwriting, we didn't budget correctly for contingencies, so we're currently underwater in this project. Wow, this isn't the one I changed, Carl. So we went with this builder. They basically, at the end of the day, didn't have the experience that they represented that they had, even though we vetted some of their projects. And they were kind of a lethal combination of, I think, uninformed, quite frankly, of the Historic Commission's requirements, but also very inexperienced and just generally incompetent, and then also dishonest. So you can see there at the end that we ended up terminating the contract in February, and we're currently in lawsuits both ways. We're suing them for breach of contract because, amongst other things, if you look at the second to last item, there are many changes, obviously, in the building of the building that weren't in the plans. While we had discussions, particularly about the windows, of possible changes to save money, we never formally signed off. There was never a work order or a change order signed, and we ended up basically with all of a sudden framed-in window openings, and got handed a $50,000 bill for that pickup framing by them. When we discovered this, it was obviously problematic for us and, confusing for sure. However, we did not know the implications of the Historic Commission's requirements and the approval. In fact, we were never provided the notes, the staff notes, I guess, from your meetings that led up to the approval. So all of the required specs and everything we just didn't know about until Lauren gave them to us about 30 days ago. In no way am I trying to portray us as victims here. Obviously, we're the developers. We're ultimately responsible. This is just kind of how it went down. So since then, we've brought on Matrix Construction, who is here tonight, to finish the work. And as Ashley said, I didn't realize it was Lauren herself, but somebody stopped by our site and talked to one of Matrix employees and said that he was concerned about the windows. They called us. We immediately called Lauren and obviously realized that we were in a pretty serious situation. And we've since spent hours in personal meetings and phone meetings and emails with Lauren, Ashley, Molly. Carl Leith met me down there, and I kind of walked through the whole thing with him. He told me a little bit about you guys and how things would go, and explained that you had discretion over staff recommendations, and he was, I guess, optimistic, for lack of a better word. He was supportive. And also in the meantime, we've spent a lot of time consulting with Lauren and Ashley on the design standards, and we've done quite a bit of work to try to substantiate that our building meets those as built or as proposed. Addressing a few, I think 3 of the 4 items that Ashley just brought up, the proportion of the openings, my understanding is that's what fenestration means. I could be wrong about that. Modulation, the rhythm to the solid voids, and then the materials. There was one other item that you brought up that I'm not addressing, but I think that was the gist of it, I guess. So as far as we obviously ended up with 4 panes of glass in the overall design. Pardon my flipping around here. So we've got this repeating pattern or modulation, I guess, of that 4-pane design. And what we were able to establish in the immediate surroundings and also just in the historic district in general is that there are quite a few examples of 4-pane layouts nearby, and also, if you notice, they're stacked 4-pane layouts, just kind of like what ours is. This, I want to point out, the solid to void ratio as well is it's a larger solid to void ratio. More examples of 4-pane layouts. This one is we feel is one of the strongest for us. That has a very similar 4-pane layout and solid to void ratio. We all know that building, 4 panels. I just thought that'd be interesting to put in there. So 4 panels, and those are in the historic district, right? So anyway. As far addressing the solid to void ratio, once again, we were able to find some precedent, especially on some more recently built buildings that have a small or have quite a bit larger solid to void ratio. We realized that in the reframing of our windows that we lost some of, or the solid to void ratio got larger, and we realized that, and we feel like we've substantiated some precedent for that in some of these in some of these slides here. That's an older building with masonry, just like us. Couple of different buildings there, one modern, one not modern, with solid to void ratios similar to us. So I just wanted to put that back in there. I think we still have a lot of glass, and is representative or is reflective, I guess, of other buildings in the vicinity. As far as materials go, Carl, you want to grab those? We actually brought a sample of the brick and a sample of the metal siding and a sample of the tongue and groove cedar that's going to be used. Probably show them the brick and the metal together and maybe just walk that around.
Yeah, so this is the brick. This is tongue and groove cedar that will be on the underside of the soffits of the decks. And that was actually called out in the original plans, and that'll just be...
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, this is the tongue and groove cedar that'll go in the soffit of the decks, and that was called out in the original plans. And we have this is our brick material, and I do believe this is called out in the plans, and so is our metal siding, 22 gauge steel. So these are just examples of what we've got, and that these are parts where we've followed the plans. I don't want to put that down on there because it's glass.
So basically, this building obviously is a one-of-a-kind building in the setting that it's in. It's modern in a very traditional area. And while you guys know a lot more about this than me, it seems to me like it was never necessarily meant to fit in per se, but to stand on its own. And yet we still feel like, even with the changes in the plans, it kind of almost, I use the word miraculously here, I think it fell into place in a beautiful way that incorporates and pulls in some aspects from some other buildings nearby that aren't necessarily homogeneous with the three-pane look that's immediately to the east on that building next door. Further, we feel like the tweaks that we're proposing to what has already been built, which are going to cost us quite a bit to make, will also further enhance the building and the fitting into the norms and the expectations of the historic district. So we feel really good about the building as produced, as proposed, and we respectfully and humbly ask you to approve our proposal. So happy to answer any questions.
Good, thank you. Yeah, commissioners, do you have questions for the applicant?
I have a couple.
Charles? Go for it.
Questions about kind of, and Ashley, you may need to, if you can, recognizing that you have a later understanding of the project. I'm curious about the materials and some of their colors. I know colors are not specifically under our purview, but because there was a material palette proposed originally and today, I think color sort of is a germane part of that. Do we know the black brick, the current steel, was that in iteration 2 of this design? And this is kind of the question for Ashley, I guess, because I looked on like a page about 100 of the staff report had renderings from I think the original application where, and a picture of the material palette where the brick was light, the metal was dark, and anyways, and then we have these earlier versions, or we have this version and this. Can you guys collectively give us history of material and color changes?
I actually have the plans on this computer. If I need to load them, I can. It's my understanding the color of the brick has changed, but I don't think the brick itself. It was not flagged or call out any other changes on this project except for the ones that I discussed.
Tate, can you elaborate on that? Do you know?
We saw that color brick on a building in the Marmalade District and loved the way that it looked inside of a district like that. And here again, we just, you don't know what you don't know. We just thought we could change it.
Okay, so the change in material color palette
We pull that up.
it
I'd
was
like to
all-
pull up that palette, please.
happened
We could pass this around here.
during your tenure. Yeah, that's the image
This
I
is
was
the
thinking
original
of.
palette, yeah. So essentially, the brick and the metal have flip-flopped in value.
In value. And then there's someplace, like I said, about page 100, there's renderings that show that, which I actually think are kind of useful as well. If you can find about page 100, I don't know where it was. It was the start of the... Sorry, I should have written it down as I was looking at it, but I think it was like the first page of the construction documents in the original proposal, original application. Maybe. So,
It's on my computer, but not on the screen. So. Oh, okay. Close this. Sorry, I don't know what you mean. Oh, yeah.
Well,
No, I meant
there's
how
that
to
one.
project it, how to get
yeah.
it projected.
Yeah, these are the images that I'm after.
I-
Is that what you have up as well?
Fine.
She's just trying to get it to project on the actual screen.
That's just a PDF, though. There's still a PowerPoint open.
I can find it on my computer too.
It's just projecting.
Yeah,
is the-
got it.
Those are big. How much they're gonna...
You know, Ashley, I think if you have that same image of the original renderings where it has the light brick, if you have that one up on that screen, I can see Paul's. I think most of us can probably see one of the screens that show that light brick, dark metal iteration.
Yeah, I have I have the documents. I can't get it to project.
That's fine. That's fine. If you've got the same image we're looking at, more or less, I think that's
Okay.
that's okay.
So what's your line of thought, Charles?
Well, it has to do. It kind of ultimately spins to the color of the windows that have been installed. I think the original scheme. I'm trying to put this as a question, I guess. I mean, so you made the decision to change, or your team made the decision to change values. Light brick to dark brick, dark metal to light metal. Okay. And then the window decision, was that the black windows, was that developer, contractor, original drawings? Builder. Because I think, bingo. The observation I wanted to make, and kind of, I wish I could word it as a question, is the original palette and the original rendering had a certain lightness of structure. Could be argued. I mean, obviously the metal is a heavy percentage of the building, and I'm just trying to understand how, and the fact that the windows now punch through openings rather than go edge to edge through openings. I think those have factors that we'll need to consider, and I'm apologizing that I'm not getting this as a question to you, but I think your information has helped us. I'll kind of stop now and save some of these thoughts
Thank you,
for
Charles.
later.
Who else has questions? Paul?
Yeah, so if you had to go back to the inch of what was originally approved, can you just kind of give us an overview of what the task would entail?
Yeah, it would entail demoing out about 50 windows, I think, or more, and reconfiguring the openings and ordering custom windows for those openings and refinishing the interior and the exterior both, which would, the cost is kind of unimaginable, but we've had bids on the windows that are about $150,000 just for the window materials.
What about what would the impact be on the masonry? Would it all have to come off? Or? No. In fact, I don't have my slideshow anymore, but the proposed the proposed building has all of the windows inside of the metal. They're basically framed. So in other words, there are no windows directly in the brick, actually in either design.
With the exception of the front door.
With the exception of the front door.
But isn't the opening as built so much smaller than the opening that we approved that you'd have to get into the masonry?
Can I?
No, Paul.
The opening is the opening of the masonry is the same as the plans. The opening of the window is different. That makes sense.
I think he's asking the window openings themselves.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to see.
Paul, if you go into the staff report about page 97, there are some, the elevations of the building as approved, and while the windows are larger, they do fit within the frame of the masonry. They go
Yeah,
right to the
but
edge
my
of it.
point is that the frame would need to be way bigger. It's the frame is 2 feet smaller with what they built than what we approved.
Yes,
So they'd have to go out into the masonry and tear
not
it.
into the masonry.
Am I wrong?
It appears as though the masonry opening is the same.
Yeah.
It's just an optical illusion, I think, because of the change in fenestration.
I mean, the windows, the opening would definitely have to be enlarged, but it wouldn't require, apparently wouldn't require removal of the masonry.
Yeah, you can see that here. Sorry. Now this is.
Yes.
Another thing that it was changed from the plans is the HVAC. Ashley mentioned that there's equipment above the front door on the front facade, and there's random drops throughout the floor plan. So those are interior issues, but I'm grateful to Lauren for seeing that particular issue and recommending the approval on the shorter door.
If you'd like to speak, you're welcome to come forward. State your name, please.
So Philip Pally with Matrix Construction. One of the things that we could do, we're trying to obviously avoid replacing all the windows, but one of the things we could do with the front door is to get a 9-foot look. We could do the door and put a transom, a faux transom above the door to give it that 9-foot look. So the grains all match. There'll be a reveal, of course, at 6'8", so the door can open, but then there could be a piece of wood above that matches the door that's like a piece of door, basically, that's inset there. So it looks like it's part of the door. So that's an option that could be done to help with the front look, to give it a 9-foot look. Might be helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, commissioners, David.
Yeah, I have 2 questions, and one question will probably have a follow-up. First question is, where are the HVAC condensers located?
They're located on the back, on the west elevation.
So hanging on the wall?
No, they're on a pad on the
At ground level?
ground
Okay.
level, yeah.
Yeah, they're
Second
ground
question.
level recessed back in, so you can't see any of those from the street.
Okay, yeah, within the setback, yeah. Second question, clarification. So the areas that are fenestrated, are they surrounded by the metal siding? Okay, not the cedar, that's metal. And what is the intention for detailing between the windows, that little sliver of metal there between the 2 pieces of vinyl? What are you thinking about there?
Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris Strant with Matrix Construction. I'm the project manager on this. And so what we're thinking there is, and we've waited to get the metal guys out there because obviously if we've got to change some stuff, there's no point in having them come out now, but I'd imagine we'd have them bend some type of the material that would fit inside those, the little bit of separation we have in the windows. And then one thing I also wanted to point out too is just the gauge alone and the quality of the materials we're using are pretty high quality. I mean, a 22 gauge steel is...
Vinyl windows are not high quality.
Well, the steel and all that though is, we're not going cheap on the steel and doing so we don't get the oil can and effect and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
If I can say one thing, the vinyl windows, we talked to our vinyl window supplier, because we didn't initially install those. So we went to our guy who does vinyl windows, and they're not just a standard, maybe I shouldn't say, a residential build. They're a higher grade vinyl with a dual color. So there's some durability, a better quality than just like your average. So it wasn't like they were just the cheapest thing that were found. So got to point that out too. So there's some quality there. Maybe not this style of quality in this room, but it's better than, I think better and more durable than just your first level grade vinyl.
Right. That actually answers one of my questions. I was going to ask if I've never known of black vinyl. First of all, I guess this is new to me, but I was going to ask if you had satisfactory warranty on black vinyl windows that face due west. They're going to have an awful lot of heat and a lot of UV impact, but it sounds like you've answered that
when
question.
I originally went to look at, when I first saw the building, I thought it was a aluminum clad window. When I went up and touched it, I thought it was. So it had that appearance and feel that it was like aluminum when my initial investigation on the building was when I first saw it. So I thought it was pretty decent, and then then we see it's not vinyl. So.
Okay. Paul, are you poised?
Is the vinyl white with a black overlay of some, or is it an integral color?
The integral, yeah, I believe.
And they're white windows inside, they're inside.
So it's a higher level, higher grade.
They do look like aluminum clad windows when you're there. You said you did a field trip to this site?
We did, yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we didn't get up right next to the windows, though.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I'll say thank you, ask you to take your seats, and we can take comments from the public. And we have one comment card. Cindy, would you come forward, please?
I have to say that this is why I remain a guppy in a very small fishbowl instead of moving to a larger fish tank where I might get out of my area of habit. This is extremely sad. I want to talk about the context. This is one of the most important sections of the Central City Historic District. It contains the Bamberger Mansion and the Armstrong Jones Mansion, both political leaders in Utah, and it has contiguous intact streetscape. It's very sad to have an enforcement case on this property because it's going into a lot that's been vacant for a long time into a very important stretch of buildings. The other part of the context is that this is the second meeting in a row where you've had a development with an enforcement issue. And that's really sad also. Those of you who know me personally know that I abhor waste of any kind. I can stretch reuse of materials to a very tedious point, and I annoy some people by doing so. There is so much waste here that I am just truly saddened. There's waste no matter what you do. The previous developers who had completed a project on 8th East arrived at the city's doorstep with a design just as bad as the one that was proposed for 800 East. It took a tremendous amount of staff time to obtain the design which you approved. A tremendous amount of staff time. It took time from the inspector who made the call or the staff who made the call. It took your time as a commission. It's taken a tremendous amount of time from the new owners. The removal of building materials which were never approved is also going to be hugely wasteful. If you have any questions about why I think each facade is better as approved, I'm happy to go into detail, but I think the south and east facades are the most important, and I think the way the doors on the second level and the entry level on the south facade lined up was better under the original proposal. They were just better aligned. I think the changes in the windows make the building appear more like a commercial office building than a residential structure. But I think the reality is this is all about damage control. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Applicant, you have one more opportunity to come forward. You can respond to the public comments or add anything else if you wish.
Appreciate that. Yeah, just in terms of the difference in opinion on looking like a commercial building versus a residential building, my feeling about it is kind of the opposite. My feeling is that the floor-to-ceiling windows are very commercial looking. I think it's a beautifully designed building, don't get me wrong. I'm not being critical at all of it, but I feel like what we've brought in actually lends a little bit of a more homey feel, quite frankly, a residential feel. So that's all I needed else to say about that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. At this point, we will close the public portion of the meeting and go into executive session where we can discuss the matter at hand. Who would like to start? Go for it, Paul.
Well, I think this is just an awful place to end up. But to cut to the quick of it, I think my take on it, and I'd really like to hear what other people think, is that where we've ended up is a downgrade from what we approved. I think that's pretty clear. But the question in my mind is whether what remains complies with the guidelines. And in my opinion, the openings to solids and all of that stuff is probably okay in terms of complying with the guidelines. The thing that I am really struggling with is the change to vinyl. We never would have let that go, I don't think, to vinyl. And putting in 50 vinyl windows next to the Bamberger Matcher makes me want to cry. And I think there's really totally explicit instructions in the guidelines about vinyl. I don't think it's close. So I'm leaning towards not requiring a reframe, but requiring coming into compliance with the materials. But I'm really open to hearing what other people have to say.
Requiring a what, Paul?
An upgrade in the materials to what was approved. So basically fiberglass windows and the new doors that they've proposed for the front doors.
And
Shelley?
I guess I'm really struggling with the waste issue, foremost. I agree with Paul that as I look at the solid to void ratio, I think it works. I think it meets the guidelines. In terms of the windows, I think that they are ultimately temporary. They will have to be released. They'll have to be replaced at some point because they just don't last as long. So my inclination would be in this particular situation to approve it, just because I think that the alternative is really not conscionable.
Thanks, Shelley.
Kent, I mean, if
Well, I wanted to concur with Paul about the solid to void ratio, and one could make the argument that a series of vertical windows like this has a rhythm to it, and there's certainly precedence in the historic district for that. However, in everyone here knows I don't approve of design by committee, but in my own mind I was wondering if a series of bent metal shapes could make that vertical rhythm feel like one horizontal panel. So in other words, a dark metal, bronze, or whatever color it is, bent shape from window sash to window sash.
Like a frame around
Yeah,
the
like
four of
almost
them?
like spandrel glass, except just the bent metal just fits right into the plastic.
basically to gang those windows together into one
Gang them
assembly.
into one, instead of with a little tiny clip, but with a bigger piece of brake metal. But then that throws out the notion of vertical rhythm.
Right, does make it's a different animal. I think it came up somewhere, sort of in the questions, I think, to the applicant about the difference in window profiles. I think that would be very helpful to see, what was originally approved, that window, versus what was installed. I think, I concur, I think, and David, I had sort of the same idea of, could they be ganged into one? It does change it to a, then there's front windows and side windows, and I think there seems to be some difference in the spacing of the windows, maybe on the different elevations to some degree. I'm not sure of that. But that exploration, I think, is challenging because it does produce a pretty simplistic residential window installation as it's currently shown.
Esther, any thoughts?
I think I came in today thinking I knew how I was going to decide this. But after hearing what they had to say and all that has transpired since you took ownership, definitely makes a huge difference. And but more importantly, though, I'm curious if all this problems that you run into, if they, if the applicants have learned something from it, and if you are going to be moving forward in this venture of building in general, it's going to be helpful to know what districts you're in. Just some homework to avoid this level of, difficulty.
Yeah, please come forward if you want.
I could go on for quite a while about what we've learned and how much of a gut punch this has been for us. It's almost devastatingly expensive transpiration here of what's happening. So, yes, we've learned, and from underwriting to due diligence to vetting contractors, there's so much that we would do differently, quite obviously. Okay. As far as our plans moving forward,
hang on. I probably shouldn't have let you come forward at that. We're still in executive session, but,
so sorry.
but no, it's all right. My mistake. Stan, you want to sound in on this? No?
Okay.
Robert?
I have very mixed thoughts. I kind of just see
that. Very good.
So I don't have I agree with what everyone said so far, but I don't get there to start. I mean, to me, it's, we're talking about, can we live with this? Is this adequate? Is this colors and schemes and windows? But just, maybe it's because I'm a lawyer, right? But I go back to the process. I mean, if we give COAs all the time to people that build things a lot bigger than this, and if they can just go out and cavalierly ignore what's approved and spend millions, and then because they've spent millions and it's so wasteful to undo it, we approve it. Maybe it looks better, but we went to a lot of work to approve this, and the staff went to a lot of work. And if we grant these kind of what I call a waiver, whatever, if we grant this change, and these are really good people, so it's hard to do this. It's hard to say this. It's hard to see the waste, but the entire integrity of our system is kind of shot, seems to me, that if people can do this. I mean, it'd be one thing if it was an innocent homeowner that was that got a bad contractor, but these are self-described developers who admitted that they didn't even come out of this meeting with the criteria and got them a month ago. And it seems to me like a developer's job is to know the criteria and to make sure his contractor every day is following them. And so that's just on the windows, the brick and steel or metal was their decision. So I really struggle with approving this change, even though I know it'd be a crazy amount of money to change it. But somehow you have to protect the integrity of the system, it seems to me.
Thank you, Robert. Rocio, would you like to?
I'm pretty conflicted about this one too. I can think of the sustainability aspects and the waste But I'm also thinking about precedent. So what happens now? Would these set a precedent in the future? And it's really hard to make a decision on this because we have all made mistakes, right? This is like a really expensive one, it seems, and a really wasteful one. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty torn, but there is a reason why we have these guidelines, right? So I'm leaning towards respecting the guidelines.
And I just want to weigh in briefly on precedent, because we don't set precedent, because we think we do, but we really don't, because every case comes in on its own merits, and we decide each one according to the composition of the commission on that day and what everyone feels. So I'm not so concerned about precedent, because every project is different. I'm more concerned about complying with guidelines and standards. So.
And Shelley, to that point, I guess my thought, and I think my comments went towards precedent, but it's precedent in exactly that. Are we going to enforce our rules, or we're not going to enforce them? I mean, not precedent on how what we allow and what we don't allow, but precedent in terms of, are we going to enforce the COA that we issued?
David, you were making...
I want to weigh in on the issue of waste. I think that, these are new windows, and if they were to be replaced, I think there's a very high probability that they'd find their way into another project. So in that regard, they're...
So they don't get damaged when they're taken out?
I'm sure one or two might get broken,
Yeah.
but, no one in their right mind is going to break them and throw them all in the dumpster. I'm sure they'll find a way somewhere.
Well, the comments you've all had, these might overlap a little bit, but first thought I have is, if this were coming to us in this configuration for the first submittal, would we approve it as it is? Okay, that's kind of rhetorical at this point. Second, given that we are in a position of enforcement, there have been changes made, is there a relative level of importance of a new building versus an existing? Would we treat the two differently? If this was the Armstrong Mansion and changes like this were made maliciously or innocently, I think it's pretty clear that we would not allow it. Is there a different way to look at a new building? Third note I made was the question of precedent. Are we setting up ourselves for a situation like Robert referred to, where everyone's going to say, well, those guys on First South got away with this, can we? Shelley's point is well taken too, that each project is taken on its own merits, but we may see that. I don't know that the public will see that. And the last issue was the question of waste. What's the responsibility? Now, David makes a good point of they could probably be predominantly reused, hopefully. So that concern is a bit ameliorated on my part. But those are the issues that we've all been touching on, and I think we need to take into account here as we proceed into some sort of motion.
If I could chime in, considering waste, even though it is obviously something on the table, isn't part of the standards, and from staff's perspective, whether or not, I know every case that comes before you is supposed to be weighed upon its own merits, but certainly when these enforcement cases come up, the community is watching. Watching what you do allow and pointing to projects where the percentage of change you allow is appropriate or not.
Right. Michaela, we've had applicants who have referenced other recent commission approvals.
Absolutely.
And so this presentation was quite nice, I think, on showing a lot of different projects, but it absolutely happens that other applicants make that case of that was approved there.
I mean, that is a reality.
Yes. I'd be interested, maybe one other discussion point, Kenton, for the commission would be, and I think it's moving towards a change, a relative change, or return to the original proposal. This building is on a very deep, narrow lot, relatively speaking. It's a kind of a big, bulky building in the area, but relative visibility of the elevations, I think, is perhaps another consideration that we might want to discuss. How serious are the changes on the west elevation? One could make an observation that their air conditioning bills are going to go down because of the smaller windows on that west elevation, that totally exposed west elevation. It's kind of visible, though, because of the adjacent parking lot and things like that. This elevation is kind of visible. The south elevation is incredibly visible, of course. What does the staff, what does commission think about relative visibility, and are the front windows the same as Unit 3's front windows?
Yeah, maybe we can deal with each facade on its own merits if we are, some of us are considering approvals and some considering denials. Should we take them piece by piece, or does it really exist as a whole that we've really got to consider as a unified design?
So to be clear in my mind, we're talking a lot here about whether we allow the windows and the openings, for the size of the openings for the windows, but the issue of the brick and I guess it's coloration, the brick and metal, that's not before us tonight, right? Or is it?
No, that's not
Wasn't,
before us.
but it wasn't. My point is, I guess, that we are already allowing them to have done something that was not approved, and we're not even reconsidering that. So,
and I guess, that's where I was fumbling around with my first question with the applicant. I find, anyways, the original scheme and the original brick color much more compatible with the district. It certainly it essentially matches the color of the adjacent Bamberger. I just I feel like it had and it's hard to kind of look past the windows in these photos, but it had a different feel, I think. The light brick, the dark metal, it emphasized those recesses. The windows sort of disappeared into those recesses, those tall banks of the metal. This just brings another material color factor into play that jazzes it up in a sense, and not jazzes it up, but causes some conflict.
Yeah, good point, Paul. The dark windows sitting in the light background, they do emphasize the four-part vertical aspect of them, which wouldn't be the case
so much if that was the original.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Light and dark scheme.
Add to that, and the tripart windows, I'm just going back to the previous discussion and staff discussion of the building was essentially, at first when it came in, it was essentially a box. And then there was a push and pull of wall plane. Then it was how is this box going to be articulated? And then it was a great amount of glass that added this permeability to the building. And now it's heavier because of the brick change, and you've lost some of that permeability. And you as a commission need to grapple with, does it still meet the standards? And I think that's the question here.
Yeah, let's go back to that then. Does this, if we were seeing this building for the first time as presented, would we approve this design? And that's not a rhetorical question. That's a specific question. Stan, would you approve this building as is if this was the first time we saw it?
probably.
Paul?
Well, I think that goes right at what I was trying to say my first time around, which is that I think I would approve the window pattern and all of that. I just wouldn't have said yes on vinyl. I wouldn't have.
Shelley, do you want to?
Well, I mean, As it is now, it's not great, and so I think, frankly, we probably would have sent it, we probably would have tabled it and gotten something more. Regarding vinyl windows, I really doubt that I can tell the difference as a layperson who doesn't know anything about windows, and I bet most people can't tell, so.
Charles, what do you think?
It's hard to turn back the clock a little bit, because I think we all recognize that the approved design has a certain elegance that feels comfortable in the historic district. I think even though it's completely modern, there was a level of detailing and a level of effort in that design that was very cohesive, even though it was a product of its own time and this. With great reservation, I guess, is the answer to your question.
Robert, do you have a thought on
So
this?
I probably would, I'm not as, what's the word? I'm not an architect. I don't have as much feel for that. I mean, I don't find the windows or any of it offensive, and yeah, I like the other coloration better, but I probably would approve it. I don't, as you know, that's not, not been my concern.
Right,
and
right.
and it's just, it hasn't, and it's not even precedent. It's like if you went in to get a building permit and you don't build something right in there, they're not going to not going to give you a CO. They're going to make you go fix it.
True.
And shouldn't we do the same when we approve something after a lot of work and it's ignored? Shouldn't we go fix it? But that being said, changing to the other windows, now that the coloration with the metal and the bricks, what it is, changing to those other windows, for how much it's cost benefit, it's not there. I mean, it just doesn't do that much for me at this point. That's why this is a really hard case, because I wouldn't want to deny it, and yet I don't know where we go if we don't.
Good points. Thoughts from this end? Lucille? David, more comments?
Well, sure. As I look at this, and this is the money shot, this angle here, the two of the facade that you see as you're driving or walking. In direct answer to your question, I would say yes, I would likely approve this if it were the first time, or approve it with some conditions if this is the first time I'm seeing it. But there are things here in this model that help me think that it's acceptable. There's a lovely flowering tree. There's a grass historic landscape, and the landscaping is formal and lends something to the neighborhood, as well as the volumes of the building. So so you can gussy up something pretty well with good landscaping.
So speaking of landscaping, on the west side of the building, there's a wall from what we saw today. The retaining wall, right? So on the east side, there's a retaining wall. So it's really not what we see here. And how does that change?
Yeah, applicant can come forward, please.
So up to the point where the retaining wall steps up, where the Bamberger Mansion's elevation is quite a bit higher, we've got to the entrance there, up to the entrance, and to about, back past the front porch and stuff of the Bamberger Mansion, we do have about 1.5 feet, 2 feet that we've got plantings that will work there. Once we step up to retain the property adjacent to us behind the Bamberger Mansion and right to the west side of it, we had to put a retaining wall that goes right to the property line. The other issue we've got to deal with a little bit is the Bamberger Mansion's got the old stone retaining wall too that we've had to work with. And then on the west side, I believe we've got about 7 or 8 feet of landscaping going along the west side.
Thank you. Well, let's go to the idea of precedent. That's a really big part of this whole matter that we're facing today. No, Robert's expressed his opinion of that, and I think he's got some valid points. Shelley has as well. What do other people think about this case as precedent?
Can I maybe suggest we reframe that, Kenton, to be instead of precedents is just how does this group, because I'm curious how everyone feels about just enforcing what we approved. That's different than precedent in my mind. Precedent does matter. Are we going to, when we face this again, how will we act? But I'm just thinking, just treat this like it's the only one that ever happens. I mean, are we going to enforce our rules or not? And I don't say that in a rhetorical way. I'm not making a statement. I'm just curious how others feel about that.
Yeah, good question.
If that's okay?
Yeah, that's good. That's better, I think. Okay, enforcement.
I'm going to go back to, I'll go back to my observations about that, the original design being very well thought out, very well developed, elegant, and this is not. So I think
I concur. The original design, the detailing of the fenestration was way more elegant. It would have, and I think these would have commanded a higher value in the end. But that's not for us to decide.
Mm-hmm.
Kayla? Enlighten me.
No comment.
Oh, well, no, I have a question for you.
Oh, yes.
So if we were to go back to enforce the initial approval, what would the applicant face? Like, what are the implications for them? Like, what would they have to do for that?
well, it seems like, let me give it a shot. I think,
They
Is it
could
a
appeal.
fine? Is it,
They could appeal it.
okay.
I think technically they are not under enforcement at the moment.
I guess they could also return to staff with counter proposals, an amendment to their application, things like that. So there's,
Could guide them to that. If you felt that there were aspects, if you felt that these modifications that they presented met the standards, you can approve it. If you believe that there's more guidance and you needed to table it and have something changed that you needed to bring back, that would be an option too. Or an option for you is to go with the staff's recommendation and deny it and just approve certain portions, and they would have to change those window openings and order the windows and recycle the windows or whatever it is, but they'd have to go back to that original approval.
Kenton, I
But
think.
they could appeal a decision here.
Yeah.
Right.
And Kenton, I think one thing that we haven't discussed as the commission are the three areas that staff did recommend approval, which was the change of garage door material, front and rear doors. We've had some kind of interim proposals, I think, happening, and then the north elevation. So there are aspects that staff recommended approval,
Yeah.
and
the
then
staff
other
report.
aspects that the staff didn't, recommended denial.
Yeah. I guess that could be wrapped
The
into
other
a...
aspects,
Right.
staff is
Right.
recommending denying, which
Right.
means if you wanted to approve it, you would have to make arguments
Right.
contrary to staff's
Okay.
report.
I wonder if someone
No,
might
we
make a motion at this
Yeah,
point so
yeah.
we can kind of get after it.
Say that again, please, David?
If I can find it, I'll make the
right.
staff motion, but someone else can probably find it faster.
I'm going to make a motion. In the case of PLN HLC 2017-0072, based upon the analysis and findings listed in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Commission approve the requested modifications to the original certificate of appropriateness for the new construction project at 613 East, 100 South regarding the change in garage door material, the front and back doorway detail on the ground floor of each unit, and all modifications on the rear north facade of the building as proposed on the as-built drawings for petition PLN HLC 2017-00722. And all other aspects of the petition would be denied. That isn't in the motion, but I assume it should be.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second for that, please?
Oh,
You just, Shelley, what's the impact of that? What does that mean in layman's terms?
Well, that means that they don't have to change the north facade. They're good on the garage door material changes and the front and back doorway detail, but it means they are going to have to change the windows.
Okay, so you're saying approve the staff recommendation.
Yeah, as I think more about it, as much as I hate waste, I think it's probably the right thing to do, so.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second. We can take a vote on this. I will start on the far right with David.
I move to approve.
approve.
Approved.
I vote aye.
I was going to say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
That motion is unanimously approved. The appeal of a historic landmark decision. Anyone aggrieved by the Historic Landmark Commission's decision may object to the decision by filing a written appeal with the appeals hearing officer within 10 calendar days following the date on which a record of decision is issued. The applicant may object to the decision of the Historic Landmark Commission by filing a written appeal with the appeals hearing officer or the mayor within 30 calendar days following the date on which a record of decision is issued. So why are there two different ones there?
State law.
State law. In any case, you have an avenue to appeal this. If it's not clear to you, talk to planning staff and they'll help you through this.
Possibly ask a couple questions.
No, that is... Yeah, please talk with Ashley on that. And thank you very much. That is the only and the last item on the agenda. Thank you all. This meeting is closed.